The result of that thinking was the recognition that revenue needed a diagnostic science to make it predictable and controllable and manageable and remove that chaos. Every other part of business has that. Manufacturing and logistics and supply chain all use Six Sigma and TQM and Lean, and accounting has standard accounting principles. So every part of business has a way to manage its process efficiently, except for the process of revenue generation. So we developed the diagnostic science of revenue generation, and the diagnostic part's really critical because revenue is not a hard science, it's not physics. It is like the practice of medicine. When you go in and see your doc, you don't want them to just spin a dial and it stops on foot surgery and they're going to say, okay, we're going to do foot surgery today. You want them to ask you questions, understand where you are, understand what kind of health you really want out of life, and then diagnose it based on your current blood pressure and all those kinds of things that really impact your ability to get where you want to go. I mentioned the cost of chaos a couple of times to you, and I want to make sure that you understand how significant that is to your business, because it's the type of thing that if your competitors figure out how to remove that cost of chaos before you do, they can actually put you out of business. So let's spend just a couple of minutes and get out a pencil and a paper, and because I'm going to ask you to do some thinking about this. First, there's two kinds of business models where we can measure the chaos. One is if you're a B2C company. B2C means business to consumer, restaurants, retail, that type of thing. And the other is B2B, where one business calls on another and sells to the other business. The business-to-business model is much more complex. There's more people to sell to. You have to go chase them down. It's not like a restaurant. They walk in and sit down. So jot down on your piece of paper what percentage of the top line of a restaurant, for example, or a retail store, do you think would be the cost of the chaos, that percentage of the top line? Now do the same thing for B2B and write down the number, the percentage of the top line for a B2B company that you think is consumed in chaos. Let's take a look at what it really is. In the B2C world, about 10% of the top line. So if you're a $1 million restaurant, $100,000 a year is just being thrown away. It's going out with the old food. And you're getting nothing for it other than the headache of not having enough cash. In B2B, let's imagine you're a $10 million company. $2 to $3 million, 20 to 30% of your top line is consumed in chaos. And just take that a little further. Not only are you giving up the 2 to 3 million, not only are you getting the headaches, but every business at some point is going to do a transition. They're going to sell. And just imagine how much money is given up when that chaos is still in the business at the time you exit. We're going to show you a specific example of chaos, and we're going to work on how to remove it. And everybody has to sell, so we're going to focus on the selling process and look at how the chaos exists in the selling process. And so our goal here is, can we figure out how to lower your cost per sales hour? Throughout business, we know what our rent is per month. We know what our square footage of the rent is charged. We know what our mileage costs on our cars are, our outside attorneys cost us. We know specifically what things cost us. So what I'd like you to do is on that paper, write down what your cost per sales hour is today. Now I've asked about 10,000 CEOs what their cost per sales hour. I haven't had one of them answer me yet. So if you're struggling with this, don't be surprised, because the second question you'll see is what's your target? Well, if you don't know what you are today, it's hard to know what your target should be. So let's take a look and go through the science and understand what it would take to understand your cost per sales hour. So the first thing we need to know is, what is the operational definition of sales in your company? I mean, you hire salespeople, you have a sales process, so what's that definition? A lot of the people I've asked that question also kind of struggle with that answer. I don't know what you've got on your paper, but what we've learned is the best definition of selling is moving a deal forward. You hire salespeople to close deals and create business. when they're doing anything other than moving a deal forward, some of the things may be necessary, but they're not selling. So it's important we understand how much time they actually spend selling, because at the end of the day, if they're not engaged in selling often enough or in enough time, they won't hit their quotas, and if they don't hit their quotas, you miss your budgets. So then the next obvious question is, how many hours in a week do your salespeople actually spend moving a deal forward? We've done studies on this in case you haven't had a chance to study it in your own company yet, and I hope you will. We found that the normal company, the salespeople work about 50 to 60 hours a week, and they actually move deals forward 1 to 2 hours in a week. Best-in-class companies in the world that we've ever seen, they work 50 hours a week and they sell 10. So imagine what happens to a company that is only selling 1 hour a week when they get to 5 hours a week or 8 hours a week or 10 hours a week, like the world-class companies. We're going to take a look at exactly what that cost per sales hour looks like, and we're going to let you work through it with us. So now we've learned that the definition of selling is moving a deal forward, and that normal sales teams only actually do that 1 to 2 hours in a week. So now we're going to look at a real selling situation where the CEO comes to the vice president of sales and says, I want an additional $1 million in revenue this year. What's your recommendation? Well, 9 out of 10 times the vice president of sales says, hire more salespeople. And in this particular company, the normal quota for a salesperson is $1 million. So that just happens to work out well. To get the extra $1 million, I need to hire 1 additional person. So let's take a look at what that really looks like. So our quota goal is $1 million. And in this industry, to get a competent salesperson who can deliver on that quota, I probably have to pay him a base of about $75,000. And in order to incent them, we're going to have a commission of half of their base when they hit their quota. So that would be another $37,500. And then there are various costs of travel, entertainment, support, that type of thing, for them to get to their quota. So we've got a total cost of the salesperson of $150,000. And I was trained as a cost accountant. If you were to tell me that 15% of my gross, the $1 million, is in sales, I'd say that's a reasonable number. But now let's look at the reality. When we apply the 10 hours for best-in-class organizations, and then we contrast that to the 1 hour of the normal selling organization, what we see is that the cost per sales hour for that world-class organization is $312.50 an hour. But the normal business is paying over $3,125 an hour. Now that's a scary number. But that's not the scary part. The scary part is when you look at the fact that the world-class salesperson needs to sell $2,083 an hour to hit quota, and the normal salesperson's got to sell $20,833 for every hour they're selling. We're creating an environment that is almost guaranteed to blow up. This is a perfect example of there's that 90% difference in your cost per sales hour that's all about the chaos of everything's out of control and we're working really hard, but we're not getting where we really want to go. So let's think about the impact to you of what happens when you actually start to remove that cast of chaos and you get from the 1 hour up to 5 and then eventually up to 10. Well, the first thing is your total sales per person go through the roof. So if you've got 10 salespeople, the truth is you probably only need 4 or 5. The amount of profit per salesperson is going through the roof because they're selling 5 to 10 times as much as they did before. And the salesperson personally is making a whole lot more money, which, by the way, makes them a whole lot happier, and your turnover rate starts to drop like crazy in your company. And if your turnover rate drops, then your cost of hiring, your headhunters' fees, your training, all those things start to drop. So in addition to the upside on the growth and the upside on the revenue, you also get a reduction in cost. And so you easily get the best salespeople coming to you to work for you, and you keep the best ones you have. The problem is, what do you do with the ones that aren't good? Different issue. So the result is your cost of chaos drops and your top line goes up. That's the outcome. So you've learned that there is this cost of chaos. You do have the ability to take control of these things. And what I want to introduce to you now is this concept. There's actually a 5-stage revenue model that if you start through the stages, you start at stage 1, and 99% of companies are stage 1, where their cost of chaos is that 10 to 30%. But as you go through the 5 stages, what happens is by the time you get to the 5th stage, and that's a 3-year type transition, your chaos is dropped to 2 to 5%. In that example we had of the $10 million B2B company that had a 20 to 30% cost of chaos, if they went from 30 to 5, they're putting $2.5 million in their pocket right away, in addition to the fact they would have grown like crazy along with it. It's a big deal. That's why when I said, if your competitors do this first, they can make your life really, really tough. Okay, we're to the point now where you've learned that there is a science of revenue generation, that there's a predictable revenue roadmap that you can follow for revenue growth, that cost of chaos is what gets in the way of you being able to do those kinds of things and grow at the rate that you want to grow. You've learned that specifically in sales, there's the cost per sales hour, and you have the ability to reduce that 90%. Now it's time to make a decision whether you're going to commit to these 4 things. The first one is you have to decide you're going to wake up and own the fact there's a cost of chaos in your business, and you have to start to measure it. The second one is, after you measured it, you've got to start to reduce it. And the third one you have to decide is that you're going to do that stage 5 climb, so that you're not going to make this just a temporary, quick hit kind of thing, because if you just fix one thing today, the chaos will start to come back tomorrow. And finally, you need to join me for the next video. You're going to get to learn those 5 critical questions that you have to answer and continue answering in your company in order to keep the chaos out and to allow your top line to take off. You're going to hear from me real soon about the next video, so watch for it. And between now and then, I'd like to ask you to keep sending us your feedback. Keep telling us how this is being applied in your business, what's working, and what else you need to know from us to be able to make those, next steps forward. So thanks for being here today, and watch for that next video.